Salad. Why on earth are people talking about putting it on salad?
Understanding what people are just talking about online, you have a fire hose of information.
When you start looking at the data, they give other little nuggets of information as well.
The unfair advantage.
Kelvin, this is the most impromptu episode of The Unfair Advantage. Not like we've been doing these things super duper professionally anyway, but very, very impromptu. Not even sure we're going to hit the 15-minute mark, but you and I were having a conversation a couple of minutes ago, and I said, you've told this story to a number of different people in isolation here and there, and we thought, let's just carve it into the digital rocks of history by you sharing the story about Tabasco. So I'm going to just hand it over to you to share.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Don. Yes, I can't remember how many years I've been talking about this, but it's a really cool story around big data, big social data, large amounts of customer data. And I've had this kind of personal bugbear of if you are using social data, there are a number of different ways to use, right? One, look at your brand. So it's kind of like look in the mirror, see what they're saying about you. Maybe you go and you see, what they're saying about you and your competitors, let's get crazy. And the real value, because that's table stakes, right? That everyone's doing that. Everyone should be doing that. But I think the real value of big social data is, and I'm talking about like unlimited volume, all the social data in the world, the kind of stuff that, our partners like Brandwatch do, is using social data as unsolicited research inputs to your research methodologies. And that's, I think, if we can kind of get people to think like that, then they'll untap a whole new world of diving into what people are saying. So while we were kind of talking about this, one of the brands that we worked on with one of the agency partners, I think Jessica Wheeler, who's now at Nando's, actually worked on this as well.
Old Jess.
Good old Jess. And the brand's Tabasco. Now, when people talk about Tabasco, they don't go and say, sentiment doesn't become a thing. They don't go and say, oh, I hate you, Tabasco. You've ruined my day. I mean, maybe one or two people do that, but then they're doing it tongue in cheek because they did it to themselves. It's generally, if you've tried Tabasco and you've had Tabasco, it's because you like Tabasco. And the reason you're going onto social media and talking about it is probably to say how much you like it. But when you start looking at the data, they give other little nuggets of information as well. And so we decided, let's do a nice study on all of that Tabasco discussion and see what kind of nuggets we could pull out of that. And I'm going to put something on the screen quickly here. So for those that are watching on YouTube, they can see this, but everybody else, I'll kind of explain what we're looking at, right? There is a
before you delve into this, just for the naughty kids at the back who don't really understand this stuff, it is understanding what people are just talking about online, and you have a fire hose of information that you can gather. And instead of saying, "Oh, what are people saying about me?" You guys went in and said, "What are people saying about me?" and other things at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So in this particular story is actually around looking at what people are saying about me. So imagine I'm Tabasco and I'm interested in this stuff, but not in the context of the regular metrics that people have generally used. The negative, neutral, positive KPI that has always been associated with social listening is irrelevant in this case. And our theory and our ideal is, let's make up our own KPIs and categories. Good, neutral, bad is one way of looking at things, but what if we looked at it in habits and desires and needs and service channels and all these different kinds of things? So this is an example of that, right? We go and look at Tabasco discussion for a couple of years. This is this is quite an old graph. We've actually just done a recent one of this, which maybe we'll do an updated podcast about the findings. But in this particular study, we took 2 years of data from 2013, 2015, all across the web. In this case, I think it was actually specifically South Africa data. And we found that when people talk about Tabasco, oftentimes they tell you what they put their Tabasco on. So things like, just slam my scrambled eggs full of Tabasco, or, really, really enjoyed my Friday night pizza with chorizo and slathered in Tabasco, that kind of stuff. Cocktail, one of the latest research we're doing is, cocktail recipes with Tabasco. So people keep giving us real life scenarios of their usage habits around a product. And the nuggets that came out of this, when you start taking your eye off the general metrics and you start looking at the nuggets, were astounding. And in this case, we, here in the middle, if there's a graph on the screen, and in the middle of the graph, there's a big spike around April, May, where people were putting Tabasco on oysters. What's that? Oh, we're in South Africa. It's the Knysna Oyster Festival. Makes sense. Massive campaigns, people talking about it. Everything kind of aligns. Something interesting, but probably something we knew, right? The thing that shows up in the middle is there's a little line here of what's darker color, which relates to salad. Now, that was immediately an eye-opener. Like, salad? Why on earth are people talking about putting it on salad? But we picked up, if we looked at some seasonal trends, it tends to peak in winter. Well, why is it peaking in winter? Do a little bit of a deep dive into that, and suddenly it turns out that people want to be healthy throughout the year, but in winter specifically, they use Tabasco.
Still need a little warmth.
Right.
Yeah.
Cold salad, it's winter. Use Tabasco to kind of spice it up and make it a bit more enjoyable, bearable. I don't know. Whether you like or don't like salad. And then, so that's an insight, right? So how do you, if you're a marketing person or a research person, or even working in the retail side of things, and you're a buyer of products, how does that change your placement? How does it change your advertising, your campaign, your strategy, all of these kinds of things? Because now there's an insight into people's habits around your product or your partner's product. Now, the really fun one was a small little, not even a blip, but I mean, it's pretty substantial. This thing around popcorn. There was a substantial amount of people talking about, and growing amount of people talking about, putting Tabasco or combining it with popcorn. And this was an unknown, right? This was, why are they doing this? We haven't advocated for this. This is not a general trend that we've picked up. And
why are they veering away from salt and vinegar? They're animals.
exactly, right? So then it turns out that people are actually melting butter, putting Tabasco in the melted butter, and then pouring it on their popcorn as a way. Yeah, I mean, we've tried it. It's great.
My mouth is watering already.
Right? So the opportunity here was, hey, Tabasco, why don't you go and chat to Ster-Kinekor or New Metro or any cinema chain to see whether there's a partnership here of getting Tabasco branded salt or butter, probably salt is easier, into the chains. And I don't know whether it was a direct correlation, but a couple of years after doing this, or a year or so after doing this, I saw Tabasco flavored salt in the cinema chain. So I hope that it was all to do with this one study, probably a bit of a combination, but the trend was identified. So people were doing it, and they were interested in and desiring it. And it was able to be picked up in the unsolicited conversation on public, social, and internet conversations. So that, yeah, it was a great example of how, when you think a little bit outside the box and you don't conform to the kind of KPIs that we all think are the only ones, where this data suddenly becomes incredibly powerful.
Sure. And it's also, that you don't have to always come up with every single idea yourself. There's stuff. I mean, that's a hella form of UGC, right? Whether you're creating videos or images or just typing something out online that says, I've just smashed Tabasco in my whatever, and that starts becoming quite popular and a trend. If you're not part of that, if you're not following that, if you're not identifying those things, you're going to miss out. You don't have to come up with ideas. People are creating the stuff for you. People are experimenting all the time. I love that idea of the people are now, identifying Tabasco in cocktails and things like that. I'm super excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, there's a not to foreshadow, but there's I mean, the Bloody Mary thing is a big Worcestershire Worcester sauce Tabasco correlation, and it's growing. So that's something to be aware of. And to some people it's obvious, but to others it might not be. What was the other one? I don't know. I'll go have a look. We'll do a follow up.
It's a big opportunity for partnerships. Sometimes, as you say, Tabasco plus popcorn, a potential unplanned partnership. They wouldn't have thought of that, but because the world is speaking about it, let's try this out.
It's like you were reading my notes. So this is the finding from this updated study, right? So Tabasco struggling to enter Japan, and not a lot of chatter about Tabasco in Japan for a number of years. And then suddenly they went and collaborated with a chip company, Crabbies. I need to go and have a look at what that was. But some other chip company came out with a Tabasco flavored chip, and you can just see the conversation go through the roof. Really powerful way of entering, and I guess that's the story, right? We've seen that now with the popcorn. There's the chips. Collaboration is a winning strategy for them, and
as I think Simba would have died a very, very hard death if they didn't get Mrs. Ball's chutney. Those things are just spectacular. They're the only chips.
Absolutely nothing else works.
Amazing. Kelvin, thank you for sharing that. It is now in the digital archives forever and ever, and people will always know about the terrific Tabasco fiasco. Not really fiasco. Tabasco story. It'll stick. All right. Thank you, dude. And stick around. Episode 10 coming up in a couple of weeks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Don.
If this is old, you'll watch it, listen to it now. Ciao.
Ciao.
The unfair advantage.